my name's Adam. Welcome back to the channel. It's time to crack on with the maintenance for the Audi B8 S4. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to replace the PCV valve, the water pump and the thermostat. I'm going to show you every bolt, every connector, and of course how to get that supercharger off. So super short intro, really hope you like it, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Alright, with this many miles, I would be surprised if the intake valves do not need cleaning. So that's going to be one of the first jobs, is to get this supercharger off, have a look at the intake, see what we need to do down there, but also check for any leaks. So with that leak that we saw from the bottom of the car, that actually could be coming from up top. I've got some seals that, just in case, like valve cover seals. I mean, this engine has got enough miles that we probably need to do that. And then I'm going to go ahead and clean the intake valves, put new plugs in, new coils, just general maintenance that, you know, I need to do at the beginning of this season, especially with this car because it's completely unknown, in order to be able to get it to function well on track. So we'll go ahead and do that. But beforehand, now we've done the introduction, I can go ahead and clean some of this up because it is a mess where it was sat for so long. And I've got, of course, my handy Milwaukee portable vacuum. Time to get the intake out. I think I can just remove these clips and do this. Oh, that line just slides off. Disconnect that here. Comes out. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the air box. That just lifts out. That's easy. Next, the engine covers. They just slip off. Try and clean things up as I go. Disconnect the vacuum lines. Going to mark them. And now I've got a video saying which one goes where. Awesome. Vacuum lines should just pull off. There was vacuum, that was good. Everything needs to be disconnected. So just push down on this clip. Now I need to disconnect this hose. Oh, this hose needs replacing. So rather than disconnecting it there, disconnect this one from the top. And just push down, pull back. For this one, where the back of it was broken, I had to go in through the front, just lever up. Coming from the other side, there is a throttle body connection here. And then the last electrical connector is way back here. There. I'll show you where this is in a minute, but I'm able to take a fairly flat ratcheting spanner and feed it down here onto that nut. So it's on the nut, and then I can crank it clockwise and releasing the belt. So in order to make this part of the job easier, where I've got this 16mm, I'm going to take a round bit of tube, pop it in a vise, and as you can see I've already compressed it so that this can go almost all the way in. When I release that, it's going to spring back a bit. It's trapped it. So a little bit further. There's more. Actually going to go a little bit further up. Now, so this then becomes my extension. Remove this panel, T27, those 4 slides out, T20 comes off, so there's a little bit more clearance, goes straight onto the 16, so it just comes off. A couple of electrical connectors on the edge, pull it up, squeeze, comes off. Then we've got to remove the 2 coolant pipes. Before I go too far, just release the pressure, if there is any in the system. Obviously don't do this while it's hot. Normally there would be a bolt holding the bracket, at least for these coolant pipes, onto the engine, but it's missing. And as you can hear, I've got a pan underneath. That's good. So there is a bracket down here underneath this pipe that needs removing, and there's 2 T25s, and this pipe needs releasing from up here. Now as I was doing that, I realised there's another connector at the back I need to remove. So there's one there on the back of the supercharger. Now time to remove the 6 13mm nuts. That centre one was already loose. But now we can just take some long extensions and pass them through there and wiggle the supercharger free. One vacuum line, right at the back, gone. Another one. Because of this white top, it looks like the PCV valve has been replaced at some point. If that was not white, I would actually have to get the ECU retuned. I mean, it's grubby, it's rusty, you can see corrosion down there of the bolts. There looks to be a little bit of oil down there. I need to get a little bit more access, and I'll do that when I take the PCV valve off to find out where that's coming from. Clean some of this up. look at it now. I mean, that's just 10 times better. So now when I take off these runners, there's a lot less chance of any sand getting into the intake. Remove the fuel lines, 17mm, and there's likely still pressure in there. All right, really important, do not open the doors again. Fuel will go everywhere. Now we can remove the Torx and the 10mm. Vacuum line. These lift up, rock and release the injectors. Remove this other connector. Bottom connector there. There we go. So we just look at the underside here and we can see not only did the seals for the injectors actually get stuck in the actual fuel rail itself, but just look how dirty this is, and we're going to clean everything up like that. So I actually removed the two T30s on the fuel line to free up this fuel line so it can move a little bit. I'm going to do the same on this side so this fuel line can move. To illustrate how much of a pain these are, apart from all the fuel spilling everywhere, really have to pull and release the seals. But just go gentle with all the vacuum lines, everything, and then mop up all the fuel that you spill. There is a vacuum line here we need to remove, and then also another connector, but it looks like this is getting trapped on here, so I'm going to go ahead and remove this sensor. Cam sensor by the look of it. And it feels like the connector's release is on the other side, which is handy. So we'll look at that in a minute. But where is the connector? There you are, down there. Again, take our trusty pick and feed in and push out. Ah, injector came with us this time. Vacuum line. Look how crusty that injector is. Wow. So here's the release for that connector. So the injector just released by pressing that down and pulling that back. Look at that injector. That is just crusty. I'm going to clean these all up, but wow. Because we're replacing the PCV valve, the water pump, we've got these lines that we're going to replace as well. A lot of this is going to come out. Before I do that, I'm actually going to go ahead and disconnect and remove the injectors, remove these plates, and then tape everything up. Later I'll come back and do the walnut cleaning, but for now I just want to kind of make sure everything's clean before I get that far. This coolant pipe's in the way. I'm going to go down and remove all this and remove all this before I can get these wires out. There has to be an easier way to remove these PCV pipes. I had to end up using these tools, but they're connected and hooked under this lip in 4 places. That was a real pain. Comment below if you know how to do it the easy way. Removing this pipe here, I need to release it here. These are really handy. Just slide it either side, comes out. Section of vacuum lines that goes under this line here. So this line can now come out, just pulls forward, allowing me to gently, because it is plastic, release the lips. That's out of the way. Use a T20 back here to undo this. And very gently, I'm going to lever this out. Try and move some of this out of the way, because it's going to get very tight in there soon. Before I go too much further and actually release this coolant line, I'm going to have to drain the rest of the coolant, otherwise it's going to get messy up here. Coolant drain off the heat exchanger. This pipe has not been off for a while. This coolant looks fresh. Then the other one to release looks to be just above that. This could go everywhere. The rather worrying thing about draining this coolant is these two. I don't know what they are. I've got a funny feeling they might be part of the water pump, but they fell out when I undid one of the pipes, the first pipe. Not sure. Shouldn't be in there though. Remove the rest of the fuel line, 10mm, 17mm. So the next thing to do is actually get this coolant line out of the way. It is awkward because the bolt is with that bracket. T30 on a small socket with a 4-inch extension. Feed it through above that line onto the T30. And the beautiful thing about these swivelly heads, I don't have to be perfectly flat. Do the rest by hand, pulling the bracket so that you don't drop the bolt. The magnet's handy. So someone's obviously done this job before, because down in here is another bolt. So I'm just going to move this bracket out of the way. I don't know if I can remove it fully because there's another Torx way further down that doesn't look easy to get to. So I wonder if I can rotate it. Yes, I can. Okay. Coolant pipe should just push backwards. Of course it's not going to do that, is it? Be very careful, I don't want to have to get a new one. So I ended up getting the coolant pipe. It took way too long. The idea is you grab it up here, twist it, rotate and push. That there was one stuck seal. The close-up of that seal, quite the task to get it out. Interestingly though, this job has been done before. Down there you can see that green seal. I believe that's from the injectors. I can go ahead and continue to remove these injector wires. There's a sensor wire down here. Looks like it's from the cam sensor. Goes under the injector wire. The way to release this connector is around the back. I can actually slide a flathead screwdriver into the slot and just lever slightly and it comes off. So that's everything now. We can get the PCV valve out. Undo all the T30s. Can't believe how corroded some of these bolts are. This thing was driven in the sea. Missed one. Now the PCV valve should just come out, leaking lots of coolant everywhere of course. That seal looks a little bit flat. Wasn't leaking or anything, but definitely worth replacing, especially because I'm already here. So it's worthwhile soaking up all of this because it turns out some coolant, as you can see there, actually got into where the oil is. So we're going to soak this all up and end up changing the oil as well. So done a little bit of cleaning. It's looking good. It's not perfect. I mean, some of the aluminum is fairly corroded, but that's okay. Still got to do the thermostat, the coolant pipe and the water pump. But that oil leak, which I feared might be at the top, looked to be coming from the oil filter housing. You can see the amount of oil that is down there. That needs to be replaced. In order to not have to put the car in service mode, I am going to attempt to undo the triple square bolts on the water pump using a triple square and just a wrench. 17mm on top of the self-tensioner, and then from there, it is a bit of downwards pressure. Now the pulley can come off. All three out of the way. Pulley hopefully just comes off. Corroded. A little bit of WD-40. That did the trick. So this coolant pipe needs to come off, in which case need to remove the radiator hose. Lever just a little bit while it's still attached. This one's a good one. And this electrical connector, T25 hiding under here. Okay, so we've hit our first hiccup with the car. So the salt and the rust has come to bite us. I was just about to remove this coolant pipe, but way down in here, you can see exactly what the problem is now. There's a bolt in there that is, the head of it is completely gone. So like you see these T30s, it's worse, it doesn't have a star shape anymore and it won't come out. So I'm gonna have to put the front of the motor, the front of the engine, or at least the engine bay in the service mode. Didn't really want to do that, but it'll be a good experience. To get the car in service mode, best thing to do is take off the wheel, and then I'm missing half the fasteners, but there's like T25s down here and little plastic clips. Just on the inside, see where that hole is? That is where a 10mm bolt is going to be. And so you just undo that, do the same the other side, but then you've got to remove these T30 and T25 bolts from these positions. Now this is exactly the problem that I'm facing. This one is ground out, but others have rusted out. So over here, you'll basically see one that's completely rusted out. So even though it's for sure a pain, I really should have done this in the first place. What I never want to do is drive a car to a track and not be able to get something off like this. So it's actually a good thing this has happened, even though it's a pain. So doing it all now is the right thing to do, it's just a real pain. Oh well. Needed a bigger drill bit. And apparently a charged battery. So I drilled it out so far, and then I managed to get hold of the edge of it with a pair of vice grips. Why do vice grips work on every problem? And it looks like it came out. With the 10mm out of the way down there, now I need to remove these. So the T25 just here, nope, that one, to get rid of the bumper. This one, and I think that's everything. Just look around. Ah, no, okay, so this is the home link. So this will also need to be removed, and I think for that, it's simply a case of Releasing the wire there, and then take a flat bladed screwdriver. Just down on this side there is a little catch. Now the bumper should just pull out. So with fog lights you'll have to disconnect them. Of course clear out all the leaves. That done, the bumper should just lift off. Close up of the fog light connection, just press at the bottom and pull. And this bracket just here, which is around this cooler, just slide to the side and should come out. Revealing some of the bolts we need to remove, which is these two and one up there somewhere, in there maybe. Take a look in a minute. So I just realised I shouldn't have removed these bolts from earlier, so I've put this back in. One of the problems I was facing though was where this is cracked, it was actually difficult to get this one out. So I did manage to remove it. I reinforced it with a washer just to spread that load, because you can see the crack on the plastic. And then just popped this one back in too. This becomes the lever arm in a minute when you pull the top of the radiator support forward that actually supports the bottom of the radiator. Disconnect the pipe at the top of the expansion tank, headlights, just down here. Same over this side. And then finally, for the hood switch, just in here. Those out of the way, it's a couple of T30s. So one on the corner here. One over here. It's time for these bolts. They look to be a 16mm. And replace it with, conveniently, the bolt from the eccentric arm of a rear control arm of an M5 to allow us to pull this structure forward and make sure it doesn't fall off the car. That's enough. Time to do the others. And then for the last one, actually hiding in there through that hole. Like that. Rinse and repeat on the other side. With all that done, should just slide forward, giving all this glorious room. So I went ahead and took this coolant pipe off. This is the one that sits down in front or in between the engine and the radiator. So it was just a case of disconnecting the other pipe, and then two T27s. This is also the one though that had the missing T27 up here, and interestingly enough this lower one was already loose. So something's definitely happened before. Get rid of this belt. I would say I'm going to hope to remember where it goes, but I won't, so I'll have to use a diagram later. Looks like in order to do that I have to get rid of this pulley. So I'm going to replace it anyway. Maybe I'll just move it out of the way for now. This is one of those jobs that I actually had to get a new tool. This is the shallowest right-angled drill that I could find at 3.5 inches. With the drill bit I need, it just about fits. So I'm going to put the camera down and try and focus on this because I don't want to mess this up. This happened, which is awesome, because now I can grab the rest of the bolt that's in the head and wind it out once I get the pipe out of the way. So that's actually really good news. We can now go ahead and remove the others. For reference, there's one up here. So you can see where that hole was. And then the other two are over this side. And one's hiding behind this pipe, just there. And the other one is below it. So we can go ahead and remove those. T30, have to be careful of the pipe. You can just go underneath it. Same with the bottom one. Oh, before I go too far, I probably should disconnect the rest of the coolant pipe. This coolant pipe just here. Another one of these releases where pull that up, and from there, you should be able to wiggle it off. Had to give it a little bit of gentle persuasion. That pipe is now out. This will need removing. I'm going to loosen the clamp now and hope when this whole pipe comes off that it will be easier to remove. One more, right in the center. T27, fairly rusty. Lucky I got that one out. This pipe, yep, just comes out. It does come up out of that tube once I released it, and that tube hopefully is in serviceable condition. We'll see. So I actually don't like the look of this. The tear that I saw there goes a little bit deep. It feels really squishy and soft, like it's going to perish. Thankfully, I've got another bit of tube which looks to be identical when it comes to the diameter, so I'm just going to cut this down to size and end up reinstalling that. That's why it's handy to keep offcuts sometimes. So there's a stud from the bolt that we cut the head off. You can see that there is no torque on it because I can just unscrew this. So it wasn't as though this was corroded in the head, it was just merely where it was stretched after being torqued up on the actual pipe itself. But once you actually get the head off, it comes out easily, which is nice. So clean this all up, get the water pump and thermostat off, and I can start reassembling everything. Let's see if we can identify where those missing pieces were from. It wasn't from the thermostat, that looks to be intact. I was half expecting it to be like one of these tabs, but no. The seal's not bad. Very gentle tap, and it just frees it up. I'm actually glad we're changing this. Plastic impeller. Now's the time to clean everything. So this is the before. To this, all the surfaces have been cleaned up. Goal being, if you just run your finger along the surface, it should be completely flat. So the thermostat and water pump are ready to go back on. Basically, if it wasn't flat, or if there was any corrosion still there, then you would not seal. There is actually some corrosion down here, which I wonder if it was part of the casting or if it was where the incorrect coolant was used at some point. So that can happen because coolant, as well as keeping the car cool, actually stops it from corroding. Because I've been playing around with steam to clean it, the coolant might have got down into the threads. It's really important to dry the holes. Reason being is if you leave coolant in there and then put a bolt in there, you can actually blow out parts of the block, which you really don't want to do. I'm going to cheat, that wasn't working. This is the old water pump, and you can see basically how flat that gasket was. And I would imagine that some of the corrosion and dirt around the edge is actually where there was a minor water leak. I mean, you see it there. That suggests that the gasket wasn't doing a lot down there. Compared to the nice new one, check this out. Look at the size difference of that impeller. Not only is it metal, it's also bigger, which is interesting. I wonder if it actually moves more water, more volume. But then looking at the thermostat, very similar story. You can see on the gasket itself where there are areas, like in there, where it doesn't look like the gasket was doing much anymore. So there might have been minor leaks, which I know there was definitely minor leaks. Compare it to this nice, bright, shiny new one. Fantastic. Let's get these in. It's looking better already. So with the bolts, I actually cleaned them up with the steam cleaner. So at least for the water pump, these will look 10 times better. Still undecided what I'm going to do with the thermostat. I'll cross that bridge in a minute, but at least these will be significantly better. I'm in a little bit of a pinch, so I'm having to use some stainless steel fasteners I have lying around. Not ideal. I've already tightened them down in a kind of crisscross pattern. The torque for the water pump, 9 Newton meters. Water pump and thermostat done. Oh, before I forget, this has no play. The other one, if I remember, I'll show you in a minute, the other one was actually moving and had play. So it's a good job we're doing this. There, you can hear the play, which the new one obviously doesn't have. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the coolant pipe back on before I start working this way. So I could go ahead and reuse this as is. The issue is I have broken a bracket on it, and where it's being so old, I don't know the longevity or how long it's going to last. Also with this sensor, it is looking fairly crusty. So rather than risking it and risking a leak with the gasket, and you can see, you know, everything just needs a refresh, do have a new pipe with a new sensor and a new clip to go on the sensor itself. So all of that's going to go back in. It already comes with the gaskets, thankfully. There are 3 gaskets you need to worry about. There is one at the end there, one on the center pipe here, and then another one on the end there. So go ahead and get this back on. And for anyone paying attention, you'll notice I actually swapped out the bolts on the thermostat. So here are 3 of the originals. I managed to find 4 at a local Audi dealer, so that was great. They only had 4 though. The reason for it, and I'll show you a picture, is I didn't like the fact that the head of the Allen bolts that I found, the stainless Allen bolts, weren't that big. Plus also with that torque setting, the material difference means that the actual stretch on the bolt and how much tightening clamping force on here is going to be different between the two. So I thought, rather than risk it for a couple of bucks, I might as well just replace it with the right ones. Lube up the O-ring, just goes in there like that. And that's good. The new clip actually failed, so I went back to the old one, cleaned it up. Hopefully this won't fail. Cleaned up the faces of the head. Just need to slide the new pipe into place. Or we could even attach this first. Make sure it goes into the thermostat. New bolts for this side. Mustn't forget this pipe, so this is the one I made out of just some scrap I had lying around. Looks like it was made for it. And you can see here the angle you have to go down to get it into that bottom pipe. This end can go back on. So I've put 2 new bolts over this side, just because these were the most corroded. Top hose, once cleaned out, can go back on. There is one pipe that we need to put back on, and it's this one. Now I went ahead and got a new pipe just because they are something that frequently fails, and if I'm here and doing this, I only want to do it once. This needs crimping. So with everything lined up, just gently squeeze until they touch. I need to replace this while I've still got access, so I need to make sure that there is no oil. So that should hopefully be draining back into the engine. Now I can disconnect the sensor at the back, all the way down in there, and then disconnect the bolts and replace it. Because it's so difficult to see back there, I can tell exactly where the bolts are. It's a size 8 triple square, and I'm just going to take a 10mm ratcheting spanner, pop it on there to use that in a very small confined space. There's always one. So with this one, it actually protrudes out a little bit, and I've had to go from all the way back there to thread it through all the pipes to get it to where I need it to be. It's what's so handy about this setup. The one is over here, turns out it must be on a stud. So that's what came off. And then down in here is actually a 10mm that you can get a normal wrench on. This is the view, and as you can see, it's very tight to that bracket. It's kind of an 1/8 of a turn at a time, he says. Even then, I wonder if it's going to come out with that bracket. We'll see. That was a real pain. So I ended up having to pull this bracket back just enough to be able to undo that bolt, but it's out now. So I think it's next to impossible to get this out. So all we're going to do is actually just replace the gasket. So let's just whip the old one out, which is as hard as nails. So here's the old gasket. Yeah, here's the problem. Compare that with a new one. So look how much it does protrude, yet over time that's just flattened and deteriorated. So here is our problem and the leak, hopefully, which is what's causing that leak down at the bottom. So these nuts and bolts need to be torqued to 13. Reconnect the sensor, and now I think I can get on with the PCV valve. Give it a quick clean up. I've already cleaned up the surface. Just taking a closer look at this gasket, and you can see where it's going really, really flat. So it probably wasn't long. You can see how far the corrosion and salt and silt goes in there. So it probably wasn't long before it was going to fail completely. The new one can go into place like that. There are 14 of these. I'm just going to do one in opposite corner to get everything aligned. One of those bolts felt a little bit funny, and here is why. Basically it's filled with coolant. Time to clean all these out. Try again. Must be the OEM supplier because it's got an Audi badge on it. And it's a T30 on plastic, so guess what? 9 Newton meters. Before I forget later, I need to transfer over this bracket. So this is a T25. Now, if you've watched any of the BMW videos, there'll be ones on there about putting bolts into plastic. In this case, there is no thread, so we're going to have to cut a new one as you tighten it up, so make sure it's straight. Ah, look, needed to do the bracket beforehand. I'm an idiot. Okay. Try that again. There you go, nice and straight. This can clip back in. To save getting anything in anywhere, I am going to plug these up for the time being, and I'm going to put the new gasket on this pipe and get this reconnected to make sure this is all sealed. So the new O-ring, go on there, very quick, gentle lube, and this, hopefully, goes back in there. Done. Now it's on to removing the injectors and cleaning the intake. Time to remove these plates, grab hold of them, and they pull straight up. Ooh, interesting. Why is this side so much easier? Because we are going to clean the injectors, I'm actually going to remove them. You don't have to do that for this job, but in my case, might as well. So just remove these. Thankfully I've got a video of the orientation and that one already came out. I can't believe it. Oh! Look at this! This is why you don't buy New Jersey cars. Got to clean all that out now and hope none of it got in the piston. That's all we have time for today. In the next video we're going to wrap up the injectors, clean out the intake with nuts and hopefully get it all back together. I really hope the video was useful, and of course thanks for watching and have a great day.